that CEO that you just asked me about needs to prioritize time and energy on zeroing in on, are we living it? Do we know what it is? Mission, our big vision, our mission, our values, how we treat people, the culture that we want to create. Is it clear to us? Now, do we need to make some changes? If so, what does that look like? Are we all aligned? 100%. What are we actually physically action-wise going to do to embody this? And how are we going to hold each other accountable? Because if you don't have any of that, forget about it trying to do it in the culture, in the rest of the organization. And I find that's really challenging for leadership teams to go deep. This is not just, oh yeah, it's deep. It's really deep work.
Welcome to Unexpected Journey, the show where each week top professionals share work wisdom and life lessons about their careers and what they have learned about human experience in the workplace. I'm your host, Annebibb.
This week, we have Laura Ciel. She's the CEO and co-founder of 9Q Solutions. 9Q Solutions is a people investment consulting and training company helping leaders and their teams feel good, do good, and profitably make a difference.
Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe and leave your comments below. Now let's get started.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Unexpected Journey. We are so happy to have Laura Ciel here with us. Now, Laura and I met through Chief, and we immediately hit it off. And one of those reasons is because we're both invested in employee experience and what we're doing here in the world. And I don't even think Laura, keep me honest here. I don't think that it's even about employee experience so much as it is about the human experience.
I would agree.
So one of the things that really drew me to you was your passion about really inspiring people and really putting people first. And so many people say that, but I've really watched what you do and what your company does. And I'm curious about, why did you do this?
Such a big question.
Such a big question.
First of all, thank you for the introduction. And I just want to say I felt the same way when you and I first spoke. There is definitely a resonance with how we move in the world and how we view the world and what we hope for the world too. So for that big question, it sounds strange, not that I would have known what it was, but even when I was a little girl, I could, fortunately or unfortunately, I could feel suffering in the world. I would stay up at night, 4 or 5 years old, trying to get my mom to talk to me about what we could do. And she had no idea what I was talking about. But it was really the sense that somewhere other than where I was, people were hurting in some way, shape, or form. So I've always been drawn to this. How can we look, we're not going to make the human experience perfect. I don't think that's the point of being here. But what are the things that we can do to alleviate some of the unnecessary stress? Sometimes we create our own stress. Sometimes circumstances create stress that are in our control. Sometimes it's out of our control. So along the lines of just looking at, hey, the majority of our work, the majority of our time is spent at work for most adults in the working age. And if we're not happy, if we're not feeling good, it not only is it not good for us mentally, emotionally, physically, it's not good for everyone around us. And it's not good for anything in our personal life either. So there's this ripple effect that can work in a positive way, but it can also work in a negative way. And I've felt drawn to my whole life, whether it was through the education or my work experiences, how can we make this scenario feel a little bit better so that everyone involved can feel better themselves and ultimately do better, right? Serve at a higher level, have more fun. There's enough hard stuff. Let's have a little bit of fun in the process, right?
There really is. And one of those things that, over the last few years, there hasn't been a lot of fun. The pandemic hit and we were all just flying by the seat of our pants. And one of the things that came out of that was how leaders manage, how leaders lead.
Mhm.
And I think the pandemic really shined a light on how remote work and hybrid work, it doesn't really, well, it doesn't create bad leaders, right? It doesn't create bad managers. It actually just brings them to the forefront. It shines a bright, spotlight on the negativity that is coming from these individuals. That doesn't necessarily mean they're bad people. It just means they weren't trained on
Right.
how to be good managers. So, training them, training leaders, training managers has always been an issue. So, what stood out to you, and why was it so important that you create an organization to conquer this? Because again, it has nothing to do with the pandemic. This was a systemic issue before the pandemic.
Right. Well, the way that I look at it is the pandemic was this incredible, really was an incredible opportunity to pause and notice things that were happening. It wasn't like this was all brand new. It just, like you said, it shined the light on it, or I like to think of we couldn't hide anymore, right? Like the problems were no longer hidden. They were no longer swept under the rug. They were quite visible, for a lot of different reasons. But our company, when we co-founded our company, was actually just prior to the pandemic, and we could sense and had a real strong intuition knowing that the way that organizations and teams were running was dramatically changing, number one, and number two, that these skills that were needed for honestly for everyone, but let's start with leaders, leaders and managers, and honestly everyone, that what was going to be needed, and let's put technical skills aside, because there are changes with that as well. It's a little bit of a different conversation.
It's almost like you
um,
can teach the technical, but the
right.
other,
Right, and you do have to keep up because the technical skills are, I mean, there are rapid changes there, but it's
yes,
more tangible, right? So yes, it's more teachable because it's more tangible. When you get to things that have more to do with the human
you teach
component.
me to be a nice person.
Well, it's so many of those subtle things that are taken for granted in the people that might, naturally flourish with some of those. But it's really it's a whole nother thing, because how do you teach something that's not quite as tangible? It's harder to measure it. It's harder to teach it. We can talk about it. We can talk about how great it would be to XYZ, but then how? And that's the piece that we felt was missing. And then what happened with the pandemic is it just highlighted that. Right. And for us, one of the most powerful things that we experienced early on in the pandemic were some of our leaders who we had just finished a leadership cohort training. It was done virtually just because people were spread out. So this was before the pandemic, and we kept in contact with them as a pandemic hit, and we were checking in to see how things were going with their teams. And the feedback with them compared to feedback of people I met who either became customers or maybe were not customers, is the people who had gone through our training were managing the stress, the chaos, the uncertainty, and the fear of their team. I mean, there were so many things that they felt like, wow, this is hard, but I feel that I have the skills to deal with this. And that was wonderful for our customers and wonderful feedback for us, because we knew it was important, but it was almost like the pandemic was this weird experiment where there was a before and after, and we could really tease out what was it, where was this beneficial. So, yes, we've all been thrown into a very different world, and honestly, I think it was there before the pandemic to a certain extent. It's just been highlighted and probably magnified with that experience.
So it's interesting that you say that. One of the things that I've always wanted to try and make sure that leaders, or I always encourage companies and employers to make sure that leaders know how to do, is to recognize certain flags and signs. So people see good, or you've got the people in the middle, and then you've got the people that are at the bottom. And so I've heard very often, oh, I don't need to meet with this individual. They're performing well. They're great. I don't need to talk to them. I only need to work with this group.
Yeah.
Well, when in reality, there are bookends, and we need to make sure that we're checking on everybody.
Yeah.
And we also need to learn to watch for those flags, because even those individuals that are really showing us only 100% perfection, that is a sign, that is a flag that we need to be cognizant of.
Yeah, sometimes the people who, and especially if they've been successful, who don't look like maybe they need support or help, sometimes they're the ones who need it the most. It's really hard for some people to ask for help. It feels like you're saying, I'm weak and I can't do it. Right. And I like to look at it, and wherever anyone is, whether that's career path, whether it's in their personal life, wherever with their age, like wherever someone is, don't we all have opportunities to grow and expand and connect with people and to be there? So receive
Yeah.
and give, right? Receive and give. And it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter what your circumstances are. I can't think of one situation, person where that's not true. Everyone desperately craves connection, a sense that who they are matters, and they want to love and be loved. I
So
think that's really unifying.
that's psychological safety.
Yeah.
It's not just, and we talk about psychological safety in the workplace, but it's important at home as well.
Yeah,
We
definitely.
just, it's interesting. So I have a non-binary adult child, and they've recently changed their name.
Mhm.
And so we've just took their old stocking
Oh,
and changed their name.
oh, wow.
And that was a big thing. It
Wow.
was so small
Right.
for me to do,
Mhm.
but the impact that it had on them to feel psychologically safe in their own home and feel
Right,
accepted and secure,
right,
I had
right.
no idea the impact that that was going to have. But to your point, it's just the safety and security from a psychological standpoint in that environment was huge.
Yeah, yeah.
But going back to corporate culture, trust, trust, I mean, trust is the foundation of
Yeah.
psychological safety. If you aren't building a culture of trust, are you instilling psychological safety?
Well, if you're not building a culture that that includes trust, you're creating a lot of the consequences are not great in a lot of different areas, that being one of them, right?
Yeah.
You're not gonna have people working, producing, creating at their highest levels. You're not going to have, you're probably there's so many different things, you're gonna see a much lower retention rate. You might have more trouble hiring great people. There's and now people are less tolerant, back in the day. I tolerated quite a lot back in the
I
day.
think we all did a lot.
I don't think someone that's my age that I was then would tolerate what I tolerated. And you know what? That's a good thing. It's forcing us all to really reassess and look at and look, the workplace, an organization cannot fulfill all of what we need as a human being. And at the same time, there are incredible opportunities there for organizations, for leaders who really do want to create something that is, let's just say a little bit better than what has been, right? Like we don't have to be perfect. We can strive for perfection, but the goal there is that we're always growing and doing better. There isn't some endpoint that's perfect. It's an ever evolving thing. But if we put into place in the
Yeah.
culture those certain things that are important to that company's culture that also help each person show up as all of who they are and be able to contribute to their highest level, how can that not be a win-win,
Yeah.
right?
I think that the thought of where we were and what we put up with is it that like, that's a whole other show,
It is all
and,
leadership.
it's probably, like, several, actually, whenever you think about all of us and what we put up with. So, I'm really curious because I'm familiar with some of what 9Q does, but I also know that there are a lot of corporations out there that are dealing with trying to revisit their corporate culture, and they've suffered from, to your point, attrition
Mhm.
because people are saying, "I'm not doing this anymore." So, is this even something that is possible to change, to work on, to fix, or do you have to break it all down to the ground and build it back up? I mean,
Yeah, I
like,
mean,
just burn it all down.
maybe in some cases that might be needed, but I like to tell potential customers that really, you need to make a commitment to at least pause, reflect, assess, and get clear around where you're going. Okay, that sounds really simple, and I guarantee most people listening to this, oh yeah, we do that. But when I start asking questions, it's very clear they haven't done that. So it's almost like, yeah, 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 yeah. It's kind of in the back of my head. We talked about it one time. We're gonna these are some of our priorities, and then the day-to-day fires take place. So if there's a commitment and if there's a desire and a commitment, it's definitely possible no matter where your organization, where your leadership team where they line up. I mean, we worked with a leadership team one time post, it was technically a merger, it was functioned energetically more like an acquisition. So you had a lot of negativity, and it was a mixed leadership team following the merger. And, thankfully, that president recognized very quickly that although the numbers looked excellent, that if he didn't get first that leadership team and then the culture following that in order, aligned, clear, we know where we're going, we know where our priorities are, and we're working together rather than against each other, that there would be a blow up at some point. So for us, that's an ideal customer, right? It would have been ideal maybe if he contacted us 6 months earlier. That might have been less to burn down, but it required, really taking some time to where do we want to be, and we were helping them to get aligned, getting a team that was very, very fragmented to align around what those highest values were. Because if you don't have that, none of the other stuff matters. You can be doing the day-to-day stuff, and at some point it's going to break down. So no matter where anyone is, certainly it's possible. It really just depends on commitment, really that desire. Do they want it? Do they know what they want? Do they really want it? And how committed are they to it? And by commitment, I'm talking about time, energy, and money. And focus, really. I mean, that's a little bit energy, but it's focus. So if someone says they want this, but they're not yet really to actually dedicate those resources to pause and set a plan moving forward, there might be some movement. I don't know. So
You can try.
Honestly, it's just like if someone were going to go see, look, my background's in psychology, right? So every once in a while I get leaders going, we have a psychologist coming in here. Yikes. I'm like, hey, I'm not coming in here to do any of that stuff. I'm coming in. I'm an expert in human behavior. I'm going to help you with this, what's happening here. But it is very similar to someone who's seeking therapy, for example. If they're not motivated, if they don't really see what they want, and they're not willing to spend the resources, time, energy, money, I tell them, wait. In the old days, way back when I got my degree and I was training and working, wait until you're ready. Don't waste your time, energy, or your money unless you really are ready. So it's the same thing with organizations, with leaders.
Yeah. So recently you were a panelist at Harvard University, and whenever we kind of chatted about it, it was exciting. It was cute to see you say that you geeked out. And there were, I'm really interested to hear, what were some of the important topics, and what were some of the most surprising questions that you got at that event?
And this was a really incredible group of people. And the woman who runs the class set it up so well. And the big topic was around motivating. So the whole class is around motivation. And this particular class that I was panelist for was around motivating others. So motivating teams and motivating it was really specific. It was more specific to work because these are people in the workplace and they are also taking this, this course. So it's a great topic, right? I mean, we're like, how do you motivate other people? And one of my reoccurring comments was, it starts with us, right? Like we can't be motivating other people if we're not willing to show up and do it ourselves. But the thing that struck me the most was the diversity of, at least of the people who asked questions and interacted with us, the diversity of workplace settings that they were in and roles. I love that. It was really great to hear little bits and pieces about what they were doing, what they were struggling with, and asking for some specific, what would you do in this situation, scenarios. And the other thing that really struck me was the incredible, and I would say most people in that class were a generation younger than me, or maybe I mean they were definitely younger. What was so exciting for me was their what I read as a real desire to help their colleagues, their team members, and like a it wasn't just how do I motivate my people to produce more, right? Like kind of what I would say is more the old school approach. They really seemed to care about their people. And it was inspiring for me to hear them really struggling with, and, if it's someone who's struggling with mental health, how do I help, how do I help them when they come back from a leave? Or how do I bring in a diversity of backgrounds and experiences and human beings, and motivate them to work together, right? So it was this really strong desire to, they cared. I guess that's what it comes down to.
Hey,
They cared about them as human
they're
beings.
cute. They cared about fellow humans and the human experience.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
am so
yeah.
inspired and excited for the
It-
next
it's surprising.
generation
Yeah,
of workers.
yeah.
Like, there's hope.
Yeah. And it's not gonna always be easy. Look,
No.
I mean, it's there is an old way of doing things that's changing. We've all have been feeling it. It's changing little bit by little bit. The new way isn't there, and maybe that new way isn't super clear to people. And so it's gonna be a little bumpy at times. That's one of the things that we see in the work that we do, right? We're helping to decrease the bumps so that they're not quite as intense, so that we can realize, okay, this is part of the process of evolving and growing. If anyone remembers learning anything new, we did not just, for example, get up on a pair of skis and never have a problem and never fall down, right? Like as we're learning and as we're changing, we're going to have bumps. That's normal. But yes, it was super inspiring to hear these people really care about the people they work with and want to set things up so that everyone felt good and had a sense of trust and safety, right? And the ability to be able to be who they are and contribute to their highest level it was inspiring for me.
Well, what I think is interesting is, you talk about how we've been watching the change. And I think there was, I don't know about you, but I felt like there was much more change in 2022. Like there was a
Compared to what?
shift, like well, prior to the pandemic, it didn't
Okay.
feel like there was much change. Then there was a slow shift over the pandemic. And then 2022, it felt like the employees just said, well, I guess midway through 2021,
Yeah, I
2021
have
and
a theory.
2022, like it was just, we are fed up, we are done, we are putting up our boundaries. And it kind of was part of the great resignation. And it was an interesting shift to watch it
Mhm.
go from employer to employee. And it was, we want transparency, we want to work, the hours that we're going to work, we're going to work the job description that we were hired for, we're not going to give more than that.
Right,
And it's not that we don't want to do a great job, we're going to do a great
right,
job at what we were hired to do, but we're not going to do three people's jobs for
right.
one person's pay. They're just like some serious boundaries were put in place. And it's been interesting and fascinating and exhilarating to watch this happen. So, as first of all, I'd love to hear your theory, but then what do you think is in store for 2023
Right,
as this next generation of workers is coming into play? And we're seeing the human experience is
right,
actually being taken into consideration.
right. So my big theory about all this is, so when the pandemic hit, everyone went into reaction, pretty normal. Fight or flight is what I'm talking about, and just trying to survive. And with the idea in the background that we'll get back to normal soon, right? And then by the time we got to where you kind of pinpointed, middle of 2021, maybe a little bit toward the end of 2021, there was this realization that, oh, it's not going back to the way it was. It took quite a long time for that to happen.
Yeah, that's not just 3 weeks.
Or 3 months or 6 months, right? So there was, and people had a lot of time to, and I don't mean time like because they weren't working necessarily, but we were forced to recognize things that we could kind of distract ourselves from previously. So then you had this great reassessment that's happening underneath. And then when people realize, oh, it's not going back to the way it was, and they've already spent X number of months or maybe a year looking at, do I like this? Do I not like this? Do I want more of this? Do I want less of this? Which honestly, a lot of people, that I worked with prior to that wouldn't even afford themselves the luxury of even thinking about that for quite a while. And that all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's not going back to normal. I realize there's some things I don't want to live with anymore. I want it different. Right. And then now we've got this interesting thing where, oh, the economy is getting a little scary and people are like, what's happening here? What's going, a lot of changes, a lot of shifts and changes. Yes, for the most part, employees have had more of the power. That might be shifting a little bit as we move into this next year. I think the thing that we can count on is an acceleration of the rate of change. Right. So the best thing, what I think of is it's not identifying a let's say, a particular, I don't know, thought thing in the future that's going to happen or not going to happen, and I need to adjust to that. It's more like energy is best spent learning how to go in and being solid inside oneself. Be, and then we're better able to navigate those changes that are happening. So in my mind, when I look at 2023, we're going to have more change. And what does that look like? I don't know exactly.
You don't have a crystal ball? No crystal ball for Laura?
But what I know just intuitively is there's going to be massive change, and there is going to be a lot more of this reassessing. What do I really want? I'm seeing it a lot. I've seen it a lot with the female executives I work with. Wow.
Oh.
Wow. Wow. I mean, the number of people are saying, I don't know if I want to keep doing this. I don't know if I want to keep doing it if it looks like this. I want to do something that involves more of XYZ, which is usually something that is I don't want to say balance, because I don't actually really I don't like the idea of a balanced life, but it's integrated. That's the word that I think of. Aligned and integrated. And if they can't get that where they are, they're starting to think about, what does my next step look like? That's happening a lot right now. And even if everyone hasn't made the actual change, it's happening energetically. So I think there's a lot of crazy change, uncertainty, and wow, creativity. What's going to come out of this? That's kind of my approach. It's like, what's going to come out of this?
So recently there was an article, well, recently, it was a few months ago. There was an article that came out that said that female executives were leaving the
Mm,
C-suite
yeah.
to have babies and to spend time with their family, which I call BS on, but
Mhm. What
because
part? What part?
to have babies,
Oh,
like
yeah. Well, that doesn't exactly make sense if you look at the makeup
exactly.
of who's in those spots, but
Well, that's exactly my point, is while there are quite a few, quickly rising
mhm,
younger C-suite women, which props to them, it took me a while to get there. The likelihood is that we're outside of the baby popping
right,
age range at this point.
right.
Now, we frequently do wanna spend time with our family. However, is that truly a reason to leave the C-suite, or are there other reasons and that is an excuse?
Yeah, I vote for the latter. I believe that it's this whole reassessment, right? What do I
Mhm.
really want? People are talking about purpose a lot more than they used to. Something that I've given some talks on purpose, and over the years the response has been very different. I mean, now what I get is, ooh, I want to feel that the way you feel about your work. I want to feel that way about mine, right? Like I want it to matter. I want it to be meaningful. And before, I would say people used to think, oh, that's a really great luxury. At some point, I'll think about that more. But right now, I'm on this track. So I think this idea of my life, a person's life, having meaning or having a purpose and being a bit more, like I said, integrated and aligned with what really matters to them inside. Whereas the old way was, we're doing it for the external stuff. And that's not just salary. It could be recognition. It could be, a promotion. It's a lot of different things. It's how your family views you. It could be how your spouse views you. It could be how your friends, like there's so many different things, but external. And now we're starting to go more internal, and really asking what is it that really does matter to me? Where are my gifts best used? Where can I serve at my highest level? And they may not everyone has all of these specific questions, but there's a little bit of this unsettledness, this feeling of something's not quite there. And hey, my mom died suddenly. I know what it's like to just, like, someone's there and then they're gone. And it's been a gift for me to be able to say, am I doing today? Is what I'm doing today aligned with what really matters? Right?
It's great that you said that. I don't know if you've had a chance to watch yet, but episode 1, Courtney Brown Warren, who used to be at Twitter, she had a big conversation about how not just she actually, it was a big deal for her, but she believes that it's a big deal for a lot of people to be looking for organizations that are mission driven. And that ties very heavily into what you just said. And I think that as we continue to move forward, that while remote work and hybrid work, these are going to become table stakes a
Mhm.
as a work benefit, that it's going to become one of these things that what else can you give me? I want to be able to work for an organization that has the same culture, has the community drive, lets me continue to give back to organizations that I want to, that is mission driven, that helps with emerging markets and helps me give back to young girls in STEM. These are things that people want to be able to continue to work towards,
Yeah.
and that's going to be a future benefit that people are going to want.
Yeah. No, definitely that alignment of what the company's purpose, mission, values, all of that, what they are and what they are really. Because
What they
like I
are,
said, right,
bingo, what they are really, right?
sometimes there's some really nice words written down, but it's not being embodied by leadership. And if the leadership doesn't embody it, then the rest of the organization is really hard for them to as well. But if they are, if it is clear and they and it is being modeled, what does this look like? So someone who's looking for a job, a career, and it aligns with what matters with them, that's going to be a huge plus for that particular company versus one where it may not be real clear. We kind of do this, we kind of do that, for people who really are looking for that, that's going to be one of the deciding factors.
So as we're, we're already at the beginning of 2023. We've kicked it off. We're full force ahead. But as we continue into the next part of 2023, um, what's your advice to CEOs that they need to be aware of in order to build that culture of trust and alignment and community, to pull in the people that like what we were just talking about, the mission driven, making sure they're living by their values, so on and so forth.
Yeah, goes back to the idea that it needs to really matter to them, right? So there's an assessment that needs to be made. Is this something that's important to our company? If I'm CEO, if I'm part of the leadership team, is this something does this matter to us, right? Number one. And if the answer is yes, how committed are we? It's back to that, desire and commitment, because nothing happens without that. What are we willing to invest? And I say, honestly, the strange thing is I would say more often a leadership team is willing to invest in some money, but maybe not necessarily the time, which sounds strange because you think money is usually the thing that stops this from going forward, but it's time and energy. So what I believe is really beneficial for a leadership team is to, we all hear about these leadership retreats, and some of them are just really wonderful and great, but I want to know, what are you getting when you're done with your 2-day leadership retreat or 3-day, whatever it is. One day is a little bit short if you're really going to do what you just asked me about. And dedicate time to brainstorming around, do our values really line up with who we are? Do we need to change some of them? Does our mission statement, our purpose statement, is this really who we are? Is this really the direction we're going? So a reassessment of what has been done, back when the company was formed. For some companies, that'll be a short period of time. For some, will be a very long period of time. And then redesigning those so that they are in alignment with what that leadership team is going for. And this is all the stuff, like everyone wants to jump directly to telling, potential talent, this is what we do. And this is where it's frustrating sometimes for me, because you have that CEO that you just asked me about needs to prioritize time and energy on zeroing in on, are we living it? Do we know what it is? Mission, our big vision, our mission, our values, how we treat people, the culture that we want to create. Is it clear to us? Now, do we need to make some changes? If so, what does that look like? Are we all aligned? 100%. What are we actually physically action-wise going to do to embody this? And how are we going to hold each other accountable? Because if you don't have any of that, forget about it trying to do it in the culture, in the rest of the organization. And I find that's really challenging for leadership teams to go deep. This is not just, oh yeah, it's deep. It's really deep work, because you're asking, is this aligned with? Because if it's aligned, then it's really easy to see if something that you're considering, should we consider donating XYZ to the community? Well, you just go back to what your vision, what your mission, what your values are. Is it aligned with who we are and what matters to us? And if it is, that sounds like a yes. If it isn't, that's not the right one. So instead of trying to please everyone out there, do I do this? Do we do this because it's going to look good? Do we do this because everyone else is doing it? A company that really is embodying all of those values, the vision, the mission, they're going to know if it's aligned. And when they know potential talent, people who are looking and talking to them, they're going to be able to feel it. They're going to be able to know this is what it is. And then it's easy to make a decision, right? Yes, this aligns with mine. No, this doesn't align with mine. I'm going to go with this other company. It's really simple, but it's not easy.
Everything worth doing in life is not easy.
Yeah.
So, Laura, thank you so much for joining us today. The insights that you've provided have just been amazing. And, I just want to ask, is there something that can provide a little bit of a taste, a little bit of an insight? I almost want to say like a free assessment or something where people can see what 9Q can provide to an organization and dip their toe in. Uh,
Well, the best way to start, certainly you can look at our website, but the best thing to do is look, if you're curious, if you're wondering, if you're curious, if there's a little bit that says, I want to know more, schedule a call with me or my co-founder, and we can answer your questions, and we can tell you what we can do. We can tell you what we can't do. And where we feel that our gifts really come out. So the best thing, just schedule a time and talk with one of us. If you want to play around on our website, take a look. You can get a little feel there, but I think it's always better to talk to a human being. And there are a few things that in 2023 that we'll be doing that will just be free resources that will be launched. So definitely sign up on our mailing list. We don't send out very much, but we are going to be offering a few different free insights that people can, read, look at, watch, and see if it resonates and see if it feels like something they want to know more about. So start with scheduling a time to talk with me or my co-founder.
Fantastic. And we'll have that link to the website and to the booking link below, and any other ways that anyone can get in touch with you.
Okay. Are you asking me?
I'm asking you. I'm asking. I'm saying, is there any other way that they can get in touch with you?
I do for fun. We have a 9Q Solutions Instagram. I do for fun an Instagram. It's really more about the things that inspire me in my life. And I'm going to be starting a YouTube channel and TikTok. So that's a big deal for me. So that's something that you can look at.
Stepping out of the comfort zone.
I know, stepping up, and it's going to be a little bit of a give back and a little peek into kind of who I am and what inspires me. And it's all along the lines of expansion and thriving in life, personally and professionally. So that's another way that you can kind of get a little flavor of who I am and what inspires me.
I saw your partner shared one of his TikToks on LinkedIn.
Oh yeah, and he's in it too. Yeah. So my co-founder is also doing TikTok. Yeah, we just decided, okay, this is where the world is going. So I guess we're going that direction too.
And then of course there's LinkedIn. So
yeah, LinkedIn.
We'll have all those links below. Again, thank you, Laura. We appreciate you. And we'll have all of the contact links, and we will see everybody next week.
Thank you, Anne.
As we wrap the episode up, we would like to take this time to thank you for joining us this week on Unexpected Journey. Our guest information will be linked in the episode description, along with a link to our company website, remoteevolution.com, and our host website, annebibb.com. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share on your favorite podcast app and on our YouTube channel so that you never miss an episode and we can continue to bring them to you. Let us know your thoughts on what we discussed in the comments section. And once again, thank you for joining us. We hope to see you again next week for another episode of Unexpected Journey.